Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Derek Chisora wins fight 49 in his farewell fight in the UK, winning 117-109 on one judge's scorecard, 114-112 and 116-110 on the third judge, unanimously beating Otto Wallin in what, in my view, was a pretty one-sided contest where Otto Wallin looked absolutely awful. He looked like the ghost of himself and a husk of a husk. And you sort of got the impression after a couple of rounds that Chisora had felt things out, had the measure of Wallin, and then he fought accordingly. In other fights, he's been pressed and the action has sort of caught up with him in a tiredness sense, and he's had 3 or 4 good rounds, but Chisora in this one, he was able to conserve himself. The guy in front of him, Otto Wallin, had no desire to really make him work, and he let Derek Chisora fight his own fight. Chisora was able to pretty comfortably control proceedings, and after 5 rounds, I hadn't given Otto Wallin anything on my card. Arguably, maybe round 1 or round 2, they were pretty close. They could have been potential toss-ups, but I thought Chisora was doing more. He was the one that was landing, especially in round 1 and round 2. He would corner Wallin in the corners or up against the ropes. He would press him to the ropes, and Wallin would just put the high guard up, Chisora wailing away on the body. I thought Wallin was going to do something, that he was looking for a bit of a moment for Chisora to tire and him to take over, but it just never really came. There was a few signs of life in round 6, around one of the only few that I gave Wallin, but apart from that, he didn't look very good at all. Where Chisora was very workmanlike. He had to overcome a bad cut that opened up, what was it, round 4, round 5, and that was from an accidental head clash. And you sort of thought, is this going to get hairy for Chisora here? Is this going to end the fight? Would it dictate how he fought? But he just sort of saw it off. The cut didn't really become much of an issue after a round or so, and he was able to continually just keep doing enough round after round. Round 9, big round, drops Wallin, catches him high on the head. Wallin backs up, tries to gather his feet, but almost like trips over himself, and he's down. And that was a slight delayed reaction from the shot coming in, right hand, high on the head, and obviously he was a little bit discombobulated. And his corner was telling Wallin, look, you have to knock this guy out. That was in round 9 or round 10, between rounds. They were already saying that, and I think after round 8, I didn't have any way that Wallin was winning that fight without a knockout. So it really was a curious performance from Otto Wallin, who was just unable to do what we've seen him do before. It wasn't the box and move with confidence and manage the range and the distance where we've seen him do that against similar-sized opponents, Murat Gassiev being a very good example. It was just night and day between that performance and this performance. And Derek Chisora was able to see that, and he was able to box accordingly. And you never sort of quite got that whole Derek Chisora is absolutely gassed and, absolutely about to sort of drop because he's so tired, because it never got to that point. He was able to fight within himself. He was able to wing enough shots, especially late in rounds. There was a couple of rounds where I thought he stole the round through his actions and activities in the final 30 seconds. So he was able to calculate what he needed to do to keep picking up rounds, and as it became later in the fight, especially from round 9 onwards, he knew that he was well ahead. So he changed tack a little bit and decided that actually I can afford for Wallin to come forward and I can look for a counter here, who's sitting back on the ropes in the corners, effectively calling Wallin on and trying to catch him with something. And as it was, round 9 drops him, but also the fight kind of ended in a way that I thought it was quite it typified the fight in one sense. You had Derek Chisora, final 10 or 15 seconds, clubbing away, and Otto Wallin goes down. He beats a count that was after the bell, but it was all over by then. But I have to say, the judge that scored at 114-112, that is disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. That means without the 2 knockdowns, round 9 and round 12, he scored a draw. disgusting. That's one of the worst cards that I think that I've seen. 117.09. That's about my card. I gave Otto Wallin 3 rounds max. Maybe there's an argument for a 4th round. There was a scorecard of 116.110, which would be 8 rounds to 4. But 6 rounds, that is absolute fantasy. Cannot seeing that being in the realms of reality. As someone said to me in response on Twitter, that card must have been pre-filled in, because that does not actually account with what I saw. And put aside the commentary for a second, because they were out of control at times, talking about prime Ernie Shavers and the second coming of George Foreman. It was embarrassing. But what we did have is a pretty shot-worn Derek Chisora putting in a really dedicated and skilled boxing effort, to the point that he was able to outbox the guy who was considered to be the better boxer. But I think part of it is that Otto Wallin is now a husk of a husk of a husk. Anyone in the top 25, I think, beats him based on that performance. He looked very out of sorts, and it was shocking to some extent. I think a lot of us who've seen a lot of Otto Wallin, not just the odd big fight that he's been in, but have seen some of those fights at a lower level where he's really boxed and moved well. This was like a different guy, but perhaps age has caught up with him, that what he wants to do and how he's been effective in the past, he can't do that anymore at 34 years old. There has to be something that you consider. But it was just, literally failed to fire a shot. And if he does not have a path to victory from boxing and moving, if he can't do that, he's not going to really have any success at the high level, because he has no pop. And if he's getting caught on the ropes, as he was seemingly willingly trying to get to the ropes sometimes instead of continuing to sort of slide out and circle out, he was just opting to take some punishment instead. And that's never a good look, especially early on when, some of those rounds were tight, and him voluntarily just staying on the ropes, I think, cost him the first couple of rounds, because Chisora would just wail away. So you had Chisora boxing smart, not having to overexert himself in a way that I think many of us thought he might, that potentially it would be Otto Wallin tiring later on, and maybe Chisora having to catch up with him and sort of take down a bit of a lead that Wallin might have. It was nothing like that in the end. And the matchmaking, you have to say, has to be credited, because they've caught Otto Wallin on the way down here. He looked absolutely dreadful. This ended up being perfect matchmaking for Derek Chisora, because Wallin just not able to do what he's done in the past. And because he couldn't do that, he was very hittable and ended up being very beatable. But 114-112, that does not resemble reality or the fight that I saw. Wallin in no universe, no reality, no multiverse ever won 6 rounds in this fight. That's embarrassing, as was the performance from Otto Wallin. I don't know if he had a bad camp, or if he got sick, and regardless of the circumstances, or if he is just shot now, but that was a pretty poor performance. He looked awful. Derek Chisora, I don't think he did anything special, and actually I thought his pressure was dialed back slightly, dialed back a notch, but I think he was able to, once he'd got the measure of Wallin and what was in front of him, he was able to play, things pretty smart. He knew that he didn't have to do certain things or overexert himself, because Wallin was just not responding. There wasn't much coming back, and what was coming back wasn't hurting him at all. And Wallin didn't throw a lot of punches, which was shocking. Even when he was boxing and moving, there wasn't a lot coming back. So, this was a very good performance by Derek Chisora. A 41-year-old Derek Chisora. Otto Wallin, I'll touch on this maybe in another video, but where do you go from here after that shocker? For Derek Chisora, after the fight, they did bring out some posters, Chisora making a spectacle of it with some theatrics, posters of Usyk, Joshua, and also Daniel Dubois. It sort of seemed to be Usyk or Joshua. I don't really see those fights being, possible. I don't see a title shot being next. And if he fights someone who's truly on it, I think he gets beaten. At the end of the day, Derek Chisora is still what he is, despite these recent wins. He's a very good high-level gatekeeper to the world level. And if you're not good enough, he'll beat you. And the gate is closed. He closed the gate on Joe Joyce. He's closed the gate on Otto Wallin. This is what he does. He's got a level, and it's a very good level, but it's not quite elite. I mean, hence all the losses over the years. And this is a pretty faded version, so it doesn't speak well for Otto Wallin and the effort that he put in. But I still expect him to be in a good fight. It'll probably have some level of divisional relevance, not expecting a title fight, and not expecting it to be any of those names either. And I think if he was to face someone like a Daniel Dubois, I think he probably gets stopped. But I mean, it's boxing. Stranger things have happened. Ahead of this fight, I mean, and this is why we have the fights, to see what happens. I said in my preview video right at the end, I was hoping that Derek Chisora would win this one. And I was hoping it wouldn't be a stinker, and that he would be able to do something with Wallin. And it was shocking Wallin was so poor, but it was also kind of nice to see Derek Chisora come through this. So what next? Who next? Unclear. But yeah, Derek Chisora, he rolls on. He is defying expectations. I did a video on Patreon talking about Derek Chisora and his sort of career and bits and pieces. And, the last number of years, especially with the losses and then the win that would spur the continued career, it's been amazing. He's kind of got one of those UFC type records. The losses have not defined him as they have other fighters. So full credit to Derek Chisora and a very solid performance that he put on here. I mean, let's not over-egg it like the commentators did. It's a good win, one of his better wins of his career, but Wallin also was exceptionally poor. But obviously a win is a win. He moves on, and I guess we see what happens next for Derek Chisora. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment loud enough and hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.